Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? Mike, how are you?
Do we even need to do this week? I'd say nothing's happened since the last time we talked.
Bro, I mean, you wanted to. And here's the challenging part about it.
Do we have an hour and 15? Who do we talk to?
Hey, if you want to do a couple of segments, we could stretch it a bit. But
No.
Here's the thing about weeks like this, Mike. It can be a short burn because if it goes very badly this weekend, then the discontentment resumes. But there's a lot of interest. Let me start with the game ends against Carolina. When were you aware that a change was going to be made?
I would say that I will give Nick Underhill credit. I'm not afraid to defer to him. His antenna was up pretty strongly within hours afterward, but not it's done, because it wasn't done. And there was always wiggle room for conversations to be had and minds to be changed. But it felt like there was a sentiment post-game.
What was your reaction when you learned they had made the decision to fire Dennis Allen?
By that time, I mean, I was prepared for it. I was expecting it. I had predicted the week before that one loss at Carolina wouldn't do it on its own. Derek Carr's first game back, rusty. I didn't think one loss alone would do it, and I looked at the schedule and I thought, there's 2 more home games. If the streak hits 9 before the bye week, that's what it would take to get a midseason firing done. But again, crediting Nick, I think he recognized that coming home might have been a factor. I don't know if it was. I've never heard anyone tell me that it was, but coming back home and hosting the Falcons with booze and negativity and disinterest and all of those things might have looked pretty daunting. So it's quite possible that timing played a role in it more than me looking at a bye week as timing that made sense. I mean, it was 7 straight losses, and it was a loss to the Panthers. I mean, it's not rocket science.
It had to happen. It was over. Now, the other big news, of course, was the decision to be sellers at the trade deadline, which the Saints very seldom are. They get a deal done for Marshon Lattimore. What do you think about the deal that was consummated with Washington?
If you're gonna do it, if you're determined, or if you've decided that's something you're interested in doing and willing to do, I like the return. I sure think he was worth a second-round pick. Frankly, I think if health was not an issue with him and inconsistency was not an issue with him, I think he's a first-round talent. I think he was playing like a first-round talent earlier this year, but that was going to be really hard to pull off. And so I think a third and a fourth and a fifth for a sixth and all that together is a little closer to second round. That's pretty good for an in-season trade for a guy who's on the injury report at the time the trade happened. I think that was the best case scenario. And I think one of the best things for the Saints, though, is, I would sell this as a great deal for the Commanders. If you are a young, up-and-coming team that's making a surprising playoff push this year, to get an elite cornerback who you can also have for the next 2 years at $18 million and $18.5 million, I think that's great. But for the Saints, who we say, stop kicking the can down the road, the only way you can do that is stop spending money. And so they just got value for a guy that they will now not pay $18 million next year and $18.5 million the next year. We've been begging the Saints to stop spending money, and now they're stopping spending money on someone. So there is some value in that. It doesn't make them better, though.
He's at Mike Triplett, neworleans.football. Should they have done more at the deadline?
Not necessarily. I don't think you do it just to do it and get 6th round and 7th round picks and stuff like that. I mean, if they had other players that are not going to be a part of their future that would have fetched third-round picks, maybe even fourth-round picks. I mean, you're not getting that for Cam Jordan. You're not getting that for Derek Carr. I don't know that you're getting that for Demario Davis. I'm not trading Chris Olave. There was some wondering if Carl Granderson calls might take place. I maybe would have done it for Chase Young. I'm assuming they didn't get a fourth-round offer for Chase Young, or maybe they would have done that. Like, you don't just have to give players away, because honestly, that actually strangleholds you a little bit. If you cut guys next year, you can cut them and make them a June 1st thing, split the money up. If you trade them, all their money hits your books next year. So you don't just give guys away. I think they should have been listening for good value for anyone else. But I understand why Latimore, as a 28-year-old elite player, was the only one who brought back really good value on trade deadline day.
When you look at the remainder of the season now with an interim coach, you trade Marshon Lattimore, you have a handful of season-ending injuries already. What do you look at as a purpose for the remainder of the season, which clearly won't be making the playoffs?
Well, this team is going to try to win every game for now. I just spoke with Mickey Loomis yesterday and have an interview up on the website that everyone can look at. They don't believe in tanking. He even very specifically said, even if you get the number one pick, the Carolina Panthers are fresh in his mind. And he said the best quarterback in our league got picked 10. And Kansas City wasn't tanking at the time. They traded up to get him. So it's at his core, he doesn't believe tanking is the solution. He doesn't believe it's good for a locker room if you're quitting and you're not giving your all and you're purposely losing games. This team is just not going to lose on purpose. They just are not. Now, if it's December and they're 4-11, could we talk about Spencer Rattler starting games? Of course that's in play. That's not in play right now. It's just not in play right now. They want to beat Atlanta and beat Cleveland and go into the bye week at 4-6 and say maybe. They want to be the Steve Wilkes Panthers, who were, what did he go, 6-2, and they weren't eliminated till the last week of the season. That's what's going to happen, and you can make an argument for it as far as culture and philosophy. I mean, the players who are going to be on this team next year, you want them going into next year feeling good about themselves and being like, hey, how about the way we won 4 out of our last 6 games? Obviously, if you're a computer and you're looking at this with no emotion attached, you want the highest draft pick possible.
Yeah.
I don't think teams in the NFL actually tank until they're like, all right, we're 2-13, let's lose the last 2 games. I don't think it really ever happens before that point.
Mike, what about the Jets a few years ago when it was the Trevor Lawrence sweepstakes and they won in Week 17, which ultimately gave Trevor to Jacksonville, and they ended up with Zach Wilson. So, to your point, yes, teams aren't tanking. They're trying to win to the bitter end.
And look, Rizzi wants a head coaching job. And Mickey Loomis said, this is one thing he said in my interview with him yesterday. He said, every one of us is auditioning, and I like the list he put together. That Darren Rizzi is auditioning right now. Everyone's watching him. Are you head coaching material? Maybe not now, but Dan Campbell was an interim head coach for the Dolphins, and that's stuck on his resume because he did a good job, and he eventually became hired as a head coach. He said Joe Woods, he's going to be calling the defense now. This is on his resume. If he does a good job, maybe someone wants him as their defensive coordinator. He said young players on this team are auditioning to be starters next year. Old players on this team are auditioning to prove they still have something in the tank. Everyone in the building is motivated to win, and I get why we want them to have the number 1 pick in the draft as observers, why fans want it. But nobody wants to go out there and lose the next 7 too. They just don't.
Mike Triplett, neworleans.football. Our chats every Thursday here brought to you by Benny's Car Wash, bennyscarwash.com, bennyscarwash.com. Always encourage you, go buy the Unlimited Car Wash. Did this a couple of years ago when we started doing this with Mike, and it's one of the best. It's like $16. You get as many car washes in the month as you want. It's incredible. Go check it out, bennyscarwash.com. Okay, who should be the next coach?
All right, it's funny. 2 years ago when we were talking about Dennis Allen, should he be fired in his first year on the job, I said, okay, 3 people, God, I remember the stats. People wanted him fired 10 games in. The vitriol that he faced. But and I was like, the only way I would consider firing him after 1 year is to bring in a brilliant offensive mind who can revive this offense. And I think I remember Shane Steichen being a guy I mentioned at the time. He was a hot young candidate at the time. I feel a little differently this time. Now I think I think this team needs whoever's going to build the culture, set the direction of the team, be a strong leader. Some of those guys are Bill Belichick and Pete Carroll, who are 72, 73 years old. So that feels so temporary, but I think you consider it. Mike Vrabel obviously comes to mind as someone who could be that kind of a culture leader. There's some guys who, if Mickey Loomis still believes in the fact that you can learn from your first mistakes on the job, Brian Flores, Vance Joseph, maybe they'll be like what Dan Quinn's doing in Washington, better the second time around. So I think all those guys stand out to me. Aaron Glenn is another one. He would be a first-time head coach, but he's coming from the strongest program in the league where they've built a great culture. You want to copy that. Obviously, I think Aaron Glenn would probably check a lot of boxes for them because they respect him. They're familiar with him. He came from here as a player and a coach. I don't know if you're removing yourself enough from Sean Payton if you do that, but anything you can glean from what the Lions are doing from right now. So I feel like all of that stands out to me more than, hey, Ben Johnson. A lot of people are mentioning Joe Brady, get the hot shot coordinator. That's not my gut right now. My gut is best leader of men, best culture builder. But it's all on the table. And you probably don't get first choice. You probably get third or fourth choice, to be honest.
That's a great point. We've talked about, like, how desirable is this job to be able to go attract the top candidate relative to what other jobs might be open.
I think I say third or fourth. I don't say last. The cap situation really is not as bad as everyone says it is. It's solving itself because they don't have any players to sign to $100 million deals right now. The only one was Chris Olave, and that comes into question for an unfortunate reason with his health. The cap's going to solve itself because they're not signing anyone to $100 million contracts anytime soon. Not on this roster anyway, and you're not going out in free agency and signing, some superstar because you're not one player away right now. So the cap will get cleaned up. They are going to have a nice draft pick this year. That's almost inevitable at this point. So no, they're not the every head coach wants this job team, but look, there's going to be 8 openings this year, and they're going to get their third choice, or maybe they're going to get their first choice, depending on if they're not interested in Belichick and Vrabel and Ben Johnson. Like, somebody's coming. Nobody turns down these jobs unless you're completely dysfunctional. And they actually think some of the things that we hate about them are a selling point for a coach. They are not impatient. You're not getting fired after 1 year. You're not getting fired 10 games into your first year on the job here. You just aren't. And I think a coach might actually like that.
Okay, before you go, I guess out of obligation, Saints Falcons, give me something to watch or care about Sunday.
Well, look, it's really funny because I think if you're a fan or if you just want this team to become more interesting, it's hard to want to see them win. But there's a big part of me that wants to see Derek Carr shake off the rust of last week, Eric McCoy come back next week. And I kind of want to see that the Clint Kubiak offense works again, and the Saints. I kind of want to see, oh shoot, it was just the injuries. This team probably was a 10-win team all along. There's a morbid part of me that wants to see that. I don't want to see last week over and over again for 8 more weeks. I really don't.
No, I'm with you on that, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean. All right, he's on Twitter at Mike Triplett, neworleans.football, and our conversations are brought to you by Benny's Car Wash, bennyscarwash.com. Thanks as always, man.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.